Because he's about to be president in like 4 days, and it's a conversation we need to have. And I know a lot of people have reached out to me and colleagues of mine. And when you think about even like black entertainers, for example, if you jump on D.L. Hughley's Instagram, I mean, I can't show you all what he's saying. Essentially, he's saying, you know, if you didn't accept my president, why should I accept you? Even Snoop Dogg is saying if a black person thinks about performing for Trump, he will roast them. Hi there, I'm Brooke Baldwin. You're watching CNN. Thank you so much for joining me on this Martin Luther King Jr. Day. As the nation, of course, honors the civil rights leader, his son, Martin Luther King III, just met with President-elect Donald Trump. Pictures from just inside the Trump Tower lobby there. It is a remarkable face-to-face in the wake of Mr. Trump going toe-to-toe with another icon in his own right, someone who marched with Dr. King, Congressman John Lewis of Georgia. He marched with Dr. King back in the 60s, spoke at that march in Washington as they, of course, fought for equal rights for African Americans. The president-elect attacked Lewis, saying that he was, quote-unquote, all talk and no action. This after the Georgia congressman said that Trump's presidency was not legitimate and that the Russians helped Trump win. Here is Martin Luther King III just moments ago from Trump Tower.
Let me briefly not just reiterate, but state that we did have a very constructive meeting. The seminal right of the modern civil rights movement was the right to vote. And my father fought so diligently for, and certainly Congressman John Lewis and many others, Hosea Williams, fought for as well. It is very clear that the system is not working at its maximum. And through an op-ed that you may have seen, we provided at least a solution to begin to address a broken voting system. That was the dialogue, most of the dialogue that we talked about constructively. We believe we've provided a solution that at least will give everyone an ID.
Mr. King, as you know, Representative Lewis still has the scars from the march on Selma. Were you offended by the president-elect's tweet that Representative Lewis is all talk and no action?
First of all, I think that in the heat of emotion, a lot of things get said on both sides. And I think that at some point, I am, as John Lewis and many others are, a bridge builder. The goal is to bring America together and Americans. We are a great nation, but we must become a greater nation. And what my father represented, my mother represented through her life, what I hope that I'm trying to do is always bring people together.
Sir, as you know, many African Americans are very concerned about a Trump presidency. A woman came in here last week and told me he's going to have black people up against the wall, both literally and figuratively. Did he allay your concerns that he'll be a president for all people, black and white?
Well, certainly he said that he is going to represent Americans. He said that over and over again. And I think that we will continue to evaluate that. I think that the nation supports, I believe that that's his intent. But I think also we have to consistently engage with pressure, public pressure. It doesn't happen automatically. My father and his team understood that, did that. And I think that Americans are prepared to do that.
But sir, if I may follow up, isn't there something that just cuts to your core when you hear the president-elect refer to John Lewis as all talk and no action? I mean, nothing could be further from the truth, isn't that right? John Lewis is not all talk and no action.
No, absolutely, I would say John Lewis has demonstrated that he's action. As I said, things get said on both sides in the heat of emotion. And at some point, this nation, we've got to move forward. We can't stay on. I mean, people are literally probably dying. We need to be talking about how do we feed people? How do we clothe people? How do we create the best education system? That's what we need to be focused on.
On this day, what were
That last voice there you heard asking the question, I recognize that. That is Mr. Jim Acosta, who's now outside of Trump Tower. And so, Jim, we'll talk about what Dr. King's son said in a moment, but just can you give us some context of the meeting? Who called whom? What was discussed?
You know, that is a very good question. We don't have all the details in terms of who called who, but we do know that this follows what were some plans for Donald Trump to go down to Washington today. He was set to go down to Washington today, according to his counselor, incoming White House counselor Kellyanne Conway, and then we found out late last night that trip was being scrapped, that he was no longer coming. And then we heard this morning that Martin Luther King III was going to be meeting with the president-elect. We should point out to our viewers, Brooke, that Donald Trump did emerge from those elevators with Martin Luther King III for just a few moments, paused to get the cameras rolling and so forth, and then he went back into the elevator, went back upstairs in Trump Tower, and did not answer any questions. And then for a few moments, Martin Luther King III, as well as one of Trump's aides, Omarosa Manigault, started walking away. We started shouting down the corridor there inside of Trump Tower, asking Mr. King to come back and talk to us, which he did do. And that's when you heard him make those remarks there, saying that he does not agree with the president-elect's tweet that John Lewis is all talk and no action. He said that he's demonstrated that he is action, but that he believes things are said in the heat of the moment. You get the sense from listening to Martin Luther King III there, Brooke, that he would like to see this country come together. I asked him at one point, there was another reporter who asked, can Donald Trump be a president for all Americans? And he said, well, that is his intent. That is his intent. And I asked, well, do you think that that's how it's going to be? And he did not really answer that question. And so, yes, Martin Luther King III came up to talk about poverty programs, saying that is what his father, the slain civil rights leader, would be talking about today, but would be advocating for today. And so they did discuss that during this meeting. But, in terms of whether or not Martin Luther King III believes that Donald Trump will be a president for all Americans, I thought it was interesting. He did not definitively answer that question and said, it's up to him and other civil rights figures to really keep Donald Trump accountable on that score.
Yeah. All right, Jim, thank you so much. Hearing words like I'm a bridge builder, need to build bridges there from Dr. King's son. Today, Vice President-elect Mike Pence defended the president-elect while at the same time paying deference to Congressman John Lewis's role in American history.
You'll see President-elect Trump take the oath of office, speak to the nation in his inaugural address, surrounded by 4 of the 5 living presidents. It is a testament to the world, the vibrancy of our democracy, and for someone of John Lewis's stature to lend credibility to the baseless assertions of those who question the legitimacy of this election is deeply disappointing. I hope he reconsiders it.
With me now, Mark Morial, the president and CEO of the National Urban League. It's so nice to always have you on.
Hey,
Thank you so
Brooke,
much for swinging by.
Yeah, happy Martin Luther King Day.
Thank you, same to you. First just beginning with Congressman Lewis, and yes, he is this civil rights icon, but he's also a Democratic politician, and he called the president-elect illegitimate with a week to go before he's inaugurated. I mean, Congressman Lewis started it. He knows what he's doing. Do you think that he was looking to start something?
I think that people have gotten hung up on terminology and on the use of a word and have forgotten the essence of the discussion.
What's the word?
The essence of the word legitimate. The essence of the discussion is the role of Russia in the recent presidential campaign and the need to have a full, complete investigation and airing of the facts so we can determine once and for all the role of Russia and whether anyone here in the United States was involved in aiding and abetting spying and espionage. So I think and would encourage the president-elect to embrace a select committee, a bipartisan commission, or something that would bring all of this to light, because all of this back and forth has as its root the Russian involvement in the election.
And that's what Congressman Lewis pointed out on Meet the Press. But, if you talk to Democrats, they would say it could be more than that, right? Democrats would actually say it wasn't Congressman Lewis who started it. It was Trump who started it years ago with the birther movement,
well,
the birther
look,
conspiracies.
No
do you think that there is a piece of that at play here?
There was a kick in the gut for so many of us to see the effort to destabilize and discredit Barack Obama by suggesting he wasn't an American citizen after he was elected president of the United States. And Donald Trump did associate himself and became one of the spokespersons and leaders of that. So this may be part of that continuum.
Do you think it's a piece of it for Congressman Lewis?
I don't know. I really think, I take Congressman Lewis really at his word that the concern over Russian involvement is what's driving this. Those of us who focus on and work on voting rights want the democracy to be clean, to be pure, to be open, to be transparent. And if foreign nations are now involved in our elections, if foreign leaders are now involved in our elections, whether they impact it or not, it's espionage, it's spying, It's inappropriate. It's illegal.
No, and finally at the news conference, Trump acknowledged it, but, you talked to a lot of people and he didn't go far enough, and we're waiting to see if he puts mightier words behind that. But, when you look, Mark, bigger picture, black community, and I was sitting here as we were watching on Friday, you had Steve Harvey, talk show host, comedian Steve Harvey roll through Trump Tower. And he said he was invited by the Obama administration and by the Trump transition team to go in there. And he says he's passionate about, helping out improve urban blight in inner cities in this country. Mentioned Chicago and Detroit. But since he went in there, if you jump on social media, he has been eviscerated by a lot of African Americans in this country. And so he addressed it on the radio. Here he was.
I have an obligation to take a seat at the table when invited. Change can only happen when we sit at the table. If we sit at the table, then we can have a say-so onto what's to be eaten on the menu. On a personal note, a lot of y'all hurt me. You really did. I didn't expect the backlash to be so vicious. If I'm going to keep getting stabbed at, then at least while you stabbing me, you should understand my intent for even taking the meeting in the first place. It ain't about me and my personal gains. It's only that I care about the inner cities.
So here's what's important, Brooke.
Yeah.
There are a lot of raw feelings, a lot of emotion, people who want to be part of public resistance, and there's going to have to be public resistance. But I think sitting at the table and having dialogue
That's what he
around
wanted. That's what he
public
said.
policy. So to the extent that conversation was about young black men, unemployment and economic opportunity, it was certainly a good conversation. But I think now I would encourage the president-elect to have conversations with mayors, with leaders of organizations who work on solutions, to meaningfully engage.
What about you? President-elect Trump calls you up, Mark. Says, I want you to have a seat at the table.
If it's a real seat, what I'm not interested in is a photo op.
No, it's a legit seat, and it's part of a conversation.
I will always take a seat at the table. And I will be forceful, and I'll be forthright.
And when you get slammed like Steve Harvey was?
I've been slammed many, many times. So you got to be tough enough. You have to take it. But it's important to understand that so much of this is that people still have raw feelings about this election. It's not going to easily go away.
But it's the gut punch, Mark, that you mentioned a second ago, I think, from years of feeling punched by about to be the man who's about to be president, right? And then you factor in...
And it's a conversation during the campaign. It's all of the rhetoric that went on during the campaign.
But it's a conversation because he's about to be president in like 4 days, and it's a conversation we need to have. And I know a lot of people have reached out to me and colleagues of mine, and when you think about even like black entertainers, for example, if you jump on D.L. Hughley's Instagram, I mean, I can't show you all what he's saying. Essentially, he's saying, if you didn't accept my president, why should I accept you? Even Snoop Dogg is saying if a black person thinks about performing for Trump, he will roast them.
Let me tell you something. I understand the way they feel, and I think that their feelings are real and they're genuine. When the president is seated, we've got to work to save the nation. We've got to work to advance our cause. So we're going to be part of both the resistance.
But what does Trump need to do? What does Mr. Trump need to do?
I think what Trump needs to do in his proposals, in his early proposals, is make a commitment to the enforcement of civil rights. I think it would be powerful if he made a commitment to a new voting rights bill. If in his plan to rebuild America's infrastructure, if there were significant components in there, which included opportunities for people in urban communities, opportunities for small businesses owned by people of color. Look, I am looking for the ideas and the proposals. So if those are what are advanced, then there's an opportunity to work together. If they're not advanced, we're going to fight to get it included.
Okay.
If it isn't included, we can't support it.
Mark Mariel.
Thank you, Brooke.
Thank
Always.
you. Appreciate it so much. Coming up here on CNN, we do have breaking news today involving that Pulse nightclub shooting down in Orlando from last summer. The wife of that attacker has just been arrested in California. We have details on that coming up. Also ahead, President-elect Trump ramping up his feud with outgoing CIA Chief John Brennan, suggesting Brennan might have been responsible for leaking classified information about him.